Welcome back to On Texas Basketball. I'm Jeff Howe, joined as always by Gerry Hamilton. Gerry, not an ideal finish for Texas to wrap up the regular season, an 88-85 loss on senior night at home to Oklahoma. So, Gerry, that puts Texas at 9-9 in SEC play heading into the SEC tournament. A first-round game against Ole Miss at 6 o'clock, scheduled for 6 o'clock on Wednesday in Nashville. Gerry, when you look at the latest bracketology list, bracket projections, Joe Lunardi has Texas still among the last four byes. If there's a silver lining in this, Gerry, one of them is that, Texas lost on Saturday, but so did a bunch of other teams.
That's
So it didn't hurt as much as it otherwise would.
That's 100% it. And look, I was sitting there watching games all day. I watched Virginia Tech lose at Virginia, right? SMU lost it. I didn't watch it necessarily, but SMU lost at Florida State. New Mexico lost to Utah State. So, and there were a couple others. So when you look, Auburn lost to Alabama. So when you started looking around at the bubble teams, well, it was not bubble day. It was not. Nobody took a big step up of those teams that were truly on the bubble. VCU had won, I think, Friday night, right? So they had a win, and they're still listed as the first four out. Indiana lost to Ohio State. That was another one. So, yeah, that loss could have hurt Texas more. We often, Jeff, talked all season, or not all season, since the first game of the SEC season, would the Mississippi State game be the one that at the end of the day knocked Texas out of the NCAA tournament? Well, because Texas has a number of quad one wins, 6, and a number of quad one wins on the road, Alabama, Missouri, A&M. Texas is still, like you said, considered on most of the bracketology as not even in Dayton. They have the first round. They don't have to go to the first 4 game, so they're probably in one of those 10-slot games right now, a 7-10, somewhere around the country. So that Ole Miss game coming up Wednesday is going to be impactful. I know we're going to talk about how that could be impactful for Texas.
Gerry, real quick, going back to the Oklahoma game and setting it up for whatever's left for Texas this season. You mentioned, and rightfully so, this is not the same Oklahoma team Texas played early in the year. They're playing much better basketball. And, being at that game and then going back and looking at it again Sunday morning, I think Sean Miller was right. Look, Oklahoma just guarded Texas really well. It's almost like they made it a point to take Modest and Dalen Swain out of the game, saying, look, if Tremont Mark and Jordan Pope can beat us knocking down jump shots, then so be it. They almost did. But, Gerry, do you worry about this team from a confidence standpoint, considering the loss at Arkansas, how the OU game ended? Do you worry about them from a confidence standpoint going into the SEC tournament and beyond?
I don't. If they lose, I don't think it's going to be because of lack of confidence. I think they should be a confident team. They should remain a confident team. I mean, look, when you've gone to win at Alabama and you've won at Missouri, you've won at A&M, hell, they won at Oklahoma, right, which is a quad 2 game. Texas should be a confident team. They have to understand, though, I think, what it's – for anybody come March, you have to put it all together at the right time. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the whole deal. One of the things, even in that game last night was Jordan Pope bouncing back and having, from a dreadful game against Arkansas, he had 30, right? And he had to shoot it more than normal because of what Oklahoma did defensively to Dalen Swain. Dalen Swain had a tremendous all-around game. I don't think they should be lacking in confidence, though. I think the main thing is for this Texas team, and they've had some spurts of good defensive basketball. Offense still wins the national championship. It's still going to win in the NCAA tournament. You have to be good enough on defense, and that's the question. Can Texas be good enough in the NCAA tournament? And that's the question. Now, I will say this about the Ole Miss game. This is a game that Texas is favored to win, right? Ole Miss has not had a good season to the point of there's chatter. Chris Beard's looking at Kansas State job. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. But there's chatter in the coaching world out there. But Texas, this is a game now. If Texas goes out and lays an egg against Ole Miss, and then you end up in the play-in game in Dayton, you may lack a little confidence in that scenario. But if you bounce back and you win, and look, you don't want to go play 3 games in the SEC tournament. You don't want to go do that and play 40-minute grinding games 3 days in a row. I don't think that really helps this team come NCAA tournament time. I think the main thing this team needs to do is get the Ole Miss game. Let the chips fall where they may after that and get ready to go see if they can string together their best game, maybe best couple of games all season when it really matters the most. But one thing I think Texas did do last night in the loss was Look, I mean, they had the worst free throw shooting game of the season at Arkansas. They came right back, and I know Tremont Mark missed a couple late, but as a team, they had a really good showing again from the free throw line. But defensively, they have to be able to play well enough to let their ability to score, and they can score, kind of take over and get them over the hump in an NCAA tournament game.
No doubt. And Jerry, as we look at the Ole Miss game, this seems pretty simple. If you look at Lenardi's projections and everybody else's projections, I think the key has been, especially given what happened last year, look, if you can just get in without having to go through Dayton to get there, you probably feel good. Jerry, if they lose, they may be looking Dayton square in the face.
Yes.
If they win, though, I think everybody probably should feel pretty good about them just getting one of those at-large bids and getting into the field of 68.
Yeah, and look, I've been consistent with this on ontexasfootball.com or any basketball discussions. If you're Texas and this Texas team, why do you want to be an 8-9 seed? Why do you want to do that? So if you win an 8-9 game, you go play a number 1 seed, a Duke and Greenville, who I think they had a major injury last night, Michigan and Buffalo, Arizona and San. None of that sounds good to me. I've always preferred to be on the 10 seed line. And if you end up at 11 seed, as long as you're not in the playing game, I'm good with that too. But I would not want to be in the 8-9 game. I think those are no man's land for this Texas team because I think there's a low percentage shot that you're going to beat one of those teams in what amounts to essentially home games for those teams because they get the regional favor. They get the favorite spot in the region. So, but the Ole Miss game does loom large because that's the one that you don't want to have to sweat it out. Because what happens if you lose to Ole Miss is while Lenardi and all the bracketology will have you in as an 11 seed or in the play-in game, and maybe or in the first 4 playing game, what happens if there's 3 upsets in these conference tournaments? What happens if some team goes on a run, an SMU goes on a run and gets to the ACC final? What happens if Miami, Ohio doesn't win their conference tournament, somebody else wins it? Because Miami, Ohio will get in the tournament. So then you have to be sweating out these conference tournament championships and what happens in all those around the country and how that could flat out knock you out 4 spots and you're out of the tournament. So it's a big game. There's no way around it. You need to beat Ole Miss. You're favored to beat Ole Miss. Ole Miss has not had a really good season. They're not I don't think there is a terrible team in the SEC. I mean, LSU's had some injuries. South Carolina is closest to just being a not good basketball team. Ole Miss, because they have Chris Beard, is not that's you don't chalk those up as W's. But it's a big game for Texas. They need to win it to avoid having to sweat out the conference tournament championship games.
Jerry, there's multiple scenarios we could talk about, but I'll just throw out 2 other ones that you didn't mention. St. Louis in the A10 tournament. That's another one to keep an eye on because that could be a bid stealer if the Billikens don't get the job done in the A10 tournament. And going back to Oklahoma, Jerry, they opened in the SEC tournament with South Carolina. Then they could have a second round game against Texas A&M. If they win those 2 and get to the quarterfinals, I'm not saying they're going to be in, but they would be as hot as any team in the country, and the case would be really strong. So, again, if you're Texas, don't leave anything to chance. As Sean Miller said after the game on Saturday, look, it's basically a 1-game season. That's how they have to look at it now going into this game against Ole Miss.
And that's true. So true about Oklahoma. We talked about this on Texas football or going in. They were as hot as any team, not as good outside of Florida, but they've been playing really well, right, in terms of a hot team. Look, they'd won 5 of their last 7 games, Oklahoma. And look, they won at Vanderbilt. And if you can win at Vanderbilt, you can win at Texas, as they did. They beat Georgia at home. They beat Missouri by 16 in Norman the game before Texas. So Oklahoma's playing much better. Forsyth being healthy helps their guard rotation. And Wagyu, the big man coming on, really changed things for Oklahoma. They're a much different team than when Texas played at Norman January 31st. Forsyth was limping around, and Wagyu played 7 minutes, I believe it was, in that game. He wasn't even a factor for Oklahoma then. So they have the ability, and Porter Moser can coach basketball, man. He's been the Final Four, Sweet 16. He is a good coach. He may not have great NIL support at Oklahoma, but he's a good basketball coach. They could go on a couple-game run and make it interesting if a Texas gets bounced early, even though Missouri has a bye. If they get bounced in their first game in the NCAA tournament or in the SEC tournament, it can get interesting because those 2 teams are right there on the bubble from having to be the last 4 in to being in the play-in game.
6 o'clock Wednesday in Nashville. We'll keep talking about it. Gerry, before we get out of here, let's look at the future. Bo Ogden still playing, Austin Gooseby still playing, and we're starting to get an idea of where Sean Miller and his staff are focusing their attention when it comes to the 2027 high school recruits.
Yeah, for sure. Bo Ogden had a big game against Converse Judson in the 6A D2 region final. He had 29 and 12. I believe it was 20 in the second half of that game. They have a tough task in the state semis. They're playing Cy Falls, and Cy Falls is really good. I used to watch Cy Falls in fall league and once during the high school season. They're really good. So Westlake has their work cut out for him, but Bo Ogden continues to have a tremendous season, around 25 in 8 or 9 per game, shooting well over 40 from 3. I think he's made over 100 threes. He's up for Texas Mr. Basketball. Austin Gooseby continues to have a tremendous senior season, to the point of if he shoots 34% from 3 in the SEC against a lot of great athletes, similar size guys, I think he's going to be a first-round pick. I think he's elevated himself that much from junior to senior year. He plays with Marcus Spears, the number 1 or 2 ranked prospect in the 27 class nationally. I think Marcus has it right now. I could see CJ Rosser being the number 1 guy overall at some point. But more importantly for Texas, Marcus Spears, been to Austin a lot. His sister, Kari Spears, plays volleyball at Texas. The family comes to Austin quite a bit. Marcus has been on campus at Texas as much as anywhere else, although it may have been in the volleyball arena over in Gregory more than any other time. But he's spoken with the Texas staff a lot while on campus. Texas is recruiting him as hard as they can, and I think Texas is going to be right there in that recruitment. So we'll see what happens, but I think 2027 point guard Beckham Black is very high on Texas board. They had Dawson Batee at the game yesterday, and I think Texas is recruiting Batee heavily. We'll see where that goes. A lot could come down to what Marcus Spears' recruitment looks like for Texas, because I think they're too similar to go after both from an NIL perspective, number 1, and positionally, number 2.
No doubt. All right, Gerry, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. If you want more on Bo Ogden's regional final win, you can get over to ontexasfootball.com. Hank South caught up with Bo Ogden after the game, so we've got a report up at ontexasfootball.com. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whenever we drop a video or go live, you're not missing any of our Longhorn coverage. For Gerry, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and until next time, welcome.